to start this presentation with sort of talking about the large lecture experience, which at Purdue we have a lot of these large classes. Most universities across the country will have these large classes. They tend to look like this, large lecture hall. Some are much larger than this. And you'll see typical things that we see in the large classroom, the students talking to each other, the one sleeping, there's always one. The ones that are somehow not paying attention or looking confused or kind of sleepy. And really in the back, what can you really learn if you are not engaged in this learning process? So that's really been what we've been concerned about, what I've been concerned about for my entire career, kind of improving the teaching and learning experience. And we're really not the only ones thinking about that. I think that higher education in general, has been sort of under pressure to demonstrate what is it that we're adding, what's the value added of higher education, is it necessary? And authors in Academically Adrift and our Underachieving College have really kind of questioned that. And even in the book Academically Adrift, there's some demonstration that in some domains the students seem to be doing more poorly by the time they graduate after 4 years of college than when they started. So very sort of dramatic criticism. That's what the Center for Instructional Excellence has been sort of engaged in. Like I said, it's been sort of part of my entire consideration in my career. Centers for teaching and learning across the country are really examining those issues, and we do it in different ways. So in CIE, and you have our website address there if you want to go and look at it, and it's going to be clickable from the PowerPoint presentation, so you don't need to really have to write it down. But we've been doing the typical sort of workshops and classroom observation and sort of small instructional diagnosis instruction for faculty members. So we've done sort of the typical faculty teaching and learning support. But what we've also been doing that is new is that we've been involved in this partnership with other offices at university at Purdue, including the Office of the Provost, and now the President's Office is also providing money for impact. We partner with Extended Campus, the Discovery Learning Research Center, libraries, and information technology to engage in this project called Impact. So that's what I want to specifically talk about today, which has been our most sort of important work in CIE, really looking at transformative education. The President's Office at Purdue has identified impact as a Purdue move. There's about 5 or 6 other initiatives. Impact fits within the Transformative Education Initiative. So that's what this is about. You have the address for the Purdue move and also for our Impact website, and the brochure that I provided gives you a little bit sort of information about impact as well. So with this partnership, we have done something that had not really been done across the country. So Purdue has redesigned about 120 classes so far. The number of students that have been impacted is about 14,000, as you see. And in terms of enrollment, we're upward of 25,000 enrollments. So some of the students are actually taking multiple impact classes. We have 1 and 9 impact class. And one of the things that we're looking at right now is, does it matter? Does it make a difference if you are in 1, 2, or 8 impact classes? 10 out of the 11 colleges at Purdue have been touched or impacted. You see that most of the courses that we have redesigned are coming from engineering, health and human sciences, and technology, but we have some in all of the colleges. In terms of the projection of course redesign, by the year 2016, 2017, we're hoping that we would have redesigned about 300 courses, some of them with multiple sections, And that what that would mean for freshmen at Purdue is that all of the freshmen would experience at least one impact class in their freshman experience. So that's the goal. That's the projection. And what's interesting is that you have other transformative or transformation programs that have been done in higher education. The National Center for Academic Transformation, for example, has led that movement, but they would partner with different institutions and redesign one or two courses per institution. The concentration of all of these redesigned courses in one institution of higher education is what is sort of very new about that, or innovative. But more than the number of courses that we are redesigning, because that is important, that's interesting and important, but what I'm most interested in, and the goal of impact, the overarching goal, is to work with faculty to produce a student-centered learning environment and to really change the culture of education. And that's why I'm so happy to be talking to you today and engaging in this conversation, because the transition between high school and college is also extremely important. How do we prepare the students to become successful in college? Some of the things that we've been doing in Impact, I talk about the partnerships. I'm going to focus on that a little bit more. So we provide different kinds of support. So we have people support. So each Impact Fellow, so now we have about 60 courses, 60 faculty who are going to go through Impact each year, so about 30 per semester. Each faculty fellow is supported by a team. And they are involved in a faculty learning community. And the team is composed of people from CIE, so the Center for Instructional Excellence, ITAP, which is our information technology at Purdue, and the libraries. Many of these courses focus on information literacy and critical thinking, and that's when the pedagogy that the libraries can also provide is important. We also provide resources, so financial resources. So each course is funded at $10,000 per course, which sounds like a big amount, but it's not enough to provide, let's say, a full graduate assistant or a full course reduction for a faculty. So it's still not, it's a big incentive, but it's used mainly for supporting their redesign. That's where the provost and the president's office are really supporting us. There's technology support. So how do you use a technology in a way that will actually foster teaching and learning, and the pedagogical support. So kind of a technology, not for the sake of technology, but how do we use any strategies that the faculty decide to implement. And also measurements. So one of the big thing that we do that's also innovative is that we focus on assessing the impact of impact, assessing not just, again, how many courses we've redesigned, but aligning learning outcomes with assessment, helping the faculty design curriculum map, making sure that if you have an objective in your class, it's actually measured somewhere. So for example, a lot of the faculty will say, well, I value critical thinking. And we say, oh, where is that taught in the class? Where is that measured? And that's really when a lot of the alignment happens. But also student perceptions, not just the learning, but the student perceptions of their learning. And I'll talk about that some more as well. Our faculty learning community follows loosely this model. It's very much iterative model. We see that the third iteration of the model, for example, as they go through this developmental phase, we do better. So that we follow the courses over time. So the important piece where we start, I don't know if I can point, yeah, right here. The faculty will work with the support team to really think about their course. Where is this course in the sequence? Do students come in with certain knowledge or expected knowledge? Is this course designed to be providing prereq for another course? So that will then inform the kind of learning outcomes that the faculty will have for this particular course. We also help the faculty think about who are the students in my class. Are they engineering majors? Are they people from different discipline? And that is really something that they spend quite a bit of time thinking about, and then focusing on the learning outcomes. What is it that you want your students to accomplish? What should they gain by the end of this course? And that drives the type of redesign and what will be done. What kind of technology will be used, what kind of tools will be used. So we don't start with the tools, we start with the why. And then that comes in afterward to serve the accomplishment of the why. And iterations, because as we evaluate the course and we look at the assessment result, then we see what worked, what didn't work, and because, and I'll talk about this some more, because we follow a strong theoretical framework, if something doesn't work, we have ideas as to why, and then we can do professional development in order to improve that particular aspect, and then we go through that process again. This is something, so we ask our fellows, what are you getting from the program? And I want to talk about that a little bit. So we ask our faculty fellows to report on their experience, and I'll talk about Ellen's class a little bit more, but Ellen is one of our sort of champion of course redesign. She now has a sort of an appointment in her department doing what we do in impact, more focused in her department, so that's very exciting. She's a continuing lecturer in statistics. And this is part of a presentation that she made last year. But she will report that, some of the important benefits, and many faculty report the same thing, is that it allows them to talk to others about teaching and learning. So they participate in a community. The faculty learning community is going on for 16 weeks, so it's very intensive, very high touch, but we know that we can also obtain good results with shorter programs. Definitely. So we've done boot camp in the summer. We even did a couple of intensive days at an offsite campus. But being able to talk to others about teaching and learning and having similar concerns, that's very important. And this is one of the impact classroom in the Discovery Learning Research Center. We use that to actually deliver the professional development. She also talked about how much more intentional her teaching becomes. That just thinking about the connection between the student, the learning outcomes that she wants to achieve, makes her much more intentional about what she does. It allows her to give much more options for learning for students, which then feeds into one of the basic psychological needs that I'll talk about. So it gives the students much more autonomy in terms of choices and options. So the students feel much more empowered in their learning. She actually had 3 sections, and she actually developed, worked with all 3 modalities in her course redesign. So she had a fully online class, a traditional supplemental class. What that means is that in this case, a large lecture is maintained, but it is supplemented by online activities or recitation. And then she had a hybrid class, which is sort of the flip. It has different names in the literature: hybrid, flipped, blended, which is a combination of online lectures and face-to-face instruction. I'll come back to that model in a minute. Pre-impact learning, she said, my teaching was very much unidirectional. I taught the students. The students seemed confused or bored or just a little bit overwhelmed. And now it's multi-directional. So the students are learning from the instructor. She learns from the students, and the students, very importantly, are also learning from each other. So the collaboration, the teamwork, the fact that they're doing something different in the classroom, they're not being lectured at, they're fully engaged, really, really helps. These are the sort of most commonly used redesign models: supplemental and replacement. The replacement is the one that sometimes is referred to as hybrid, blended. There's many names in the literature. So often the lectures will be recorded, and we work with faculty on how to record these lectures. So typically it's not a 50-minute lecture like we'll do with this presentation. That would not be what we do. We would probably chunk it in 10-minute segment. Here's a module. Watch this module, come to class. So maybe there's 1 or 2 modules to watch before a class session. But in class, the face-to-face time is not lecture time. The face-to-face time is a time to do problem-solving activities, group work, interactive project. Sometimes there's actually face-to-face time that is dropped. That's where the word replacement comes in. So if it's a Tuesday, Thursday class, for example, she could meet with the students on Tuesday, but not on Thursday, and then they would do online activities or other sorts of activities. Or you could still have face-to-face time Tuesday and Thursday, except that the time would be spent doing problems, activities. These are some of the impact classrooms that we have developed in the Hicks undergraduate library. So we remodeled the underground library. This one is a more high-tech environment. So you see the computer monitors. Each round table has a computer. So this one is a high-tech classroom. We also have the low-tech classroom. There's no computers at the table. There's just one instructor, monitor, screens all around the room, because in these types of rooms there's not really a front of the room and a back of the room, because the students are in round tables. But what you don't see here that the students love is these whiteboards all around. I think you can see one here, and there's also some huddle boards that are movable, and that's really what the students use almost most of the time to write their thoughts and think about their project. She does activities like this in these classrooms, so students get on the floor and actually measure the distance that a little gummy bear will be able to be catapulted, and that's how they collect data when she teaches statistics. So it's very interactive. These classrooms tend to be loud during the activities. Then they work in group on problems. They're encouraged to work together and help each other. It's important also how we form the teams, the groups. So there's going to be diversity within the team, so the stronger students can teach other and often learn much more as they're teaching others, and everybody's encouraged to have a voice. And if you prepare to class by watching the lecture, even people that have different learning style can also contribute and participate. So you'll have some students that are going to be working much more hours before they come to class, but it allows them to feel competent, to feel able to contribute. Increased contact. So the faculty, instead of standing at the front of the room, will walk around the room, talk to the students. The graduate assistant will be talking to the students, and often the students will solve problems before she even has a chance to get there. We have it's about a 50-50 splits between the different type of redesign model that are used. So we have very few online only models, but we have some, and about 46% replacement, 48% supplemental. So the replacement model needs a special kind of classroom to be able to be delivered, and it's hard to find space on campus. New space, almost impossible to find. Although we are building, or Purdue, not me, but Purdue is building, constructing a new, the Active Learning Center, which should open in 2017, which is going to be, I think, 90,000 square foot space of active learning classroom. So that will help significantly. Importantly, most of the transformations that have been done produced a student-centered environment, and that's what I want to talk about next. Kind of like what's that? What is student-centered, and how do we assess it? And when we do create it, when it is created, what does it look like? So So here's the integrative model for learning and motivation that I published a few years ago with my colleagues. And when we published that, it was sort of just a concept to understand how self-determination theory would fit within a larger context of transformative education. So it's a busy graphic, but you can see what's important to understand in this model is that the outside is what we as administrator, faculty members, school administrator control. So what is the institutional context? And when we talk about culture, how do we assess that? How do we change that? Who are our participants? What's the context? What strategies and technologies are we going to use to foster teaching and learning? What's the content that we're teaching? What's our purpose, so the why that we engage the faculty in? Then the motivational piece, the assessment piece comes in here. So we understand student-centeredness to mean that the environment is meeting basic psychological needs of competence, autonomy, and relatedness. And when these basic needs are met, and then we have, we can talk about the types of environment that leads to the satisfaction of those basic needs, then motivation becomes more self-determined, becomes more self-regulated. So the learning becomes more self-initiated. And when that happens, that's when we see the kinds of outcomes that we want to see of engagement, knowledge transfer, reflection, lifelong learning, and other sorts of attributes become developed. And the learning processes and outcome are deep within the student. So when we say, oh, we want to motivate our students, as well, no, we can't really do that directly. The students will become motivated. It's within themselves. What we do is create the conditions that will help us satisfy those basic psychological needs. And when that happens, learning occurs. Students are not lazy. They just are not engaged. And it's our job to figure out, how do we engage them? How do we get that spark to how do we get that process started? Competence, autonomy, and relatedness. I want to talk a little bit more about that. Competence and relatedness are pretty much self-explanatory. We focus a lot on competence in a school context, but we often forget the other two. Relatedness is how important it is for people to connect with people. So it could be students with students, students with instructor, could even be with the bus driver, or some kind of significant other that keeps them engaged. Often in college, we have lots of research that shows that the difference between persevering and quitting is often one significant individual that believed in a student and said, you need to stay here, whether it's a friend, whether it's a counselor. That's very important. Autonomy does not mean independence in this model. So I like to say that it's sort of freedom within a structure, but the structure is very important. Without any structure, it's called free-for-all or laissez-faire, and that is actually very demotivating. So it's not students do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. That's very demotivating. On the other hand of the spectrum, it's also not extreme control. So giving no choices, no option, that is also very demotivating. So it's somewhere in between, and depending on who you're talking to, the age group of the students, the sandbox or the structure might be tighter or looser, but it's very important to have that structure. So it's a feeling of volition, choice, empowerment within that structure. There's about 40 years of research in self-determination theory that addressed the elements of the environment, that looked at the elements of the environment that either foster or hinder satisfaction of basic psychological needs. These are just examples to kind of get us started, but foster constructive positive feedback, choices, option, provision of a rationale. So things that we do in school are not always fun. Things that we do at work are not always fun. I don't always like to get up in the morning and go to work, right? But I feel self-determined about that. I feel like my needs are met because I know why I'm doing these things. So even if you have an activity that you're presenting to the students or a task they have to do, a rule that they don't really understand, if they can't understand the reason why this is there, the reason why we're covering this material that is difficult, the reason for a standardized test, and it fits within a trajectory, a career trajectory, then it can become self-determined. It's not going to become necessarily fun, and we'll talk about the different levels of motivation, but it will become self-determined. What hinders satisfaction of basic needs are things like rewards, threats, and yes, grades even count as rewards. So when the behavior is really contingent on, I'm doing this because I want to get an A, and that's the most important reason, that is actually detrimental to basic needs satisfaction. Gold stars, and you can see how in school we start very, very early with that, and it's a very powerful, it's often perceived, most of the time perceived as controlling. Competition versus collaboration, so in the Fosters I could have put collaboration, teamwork. Conditional regard, if you do not do this you will lose respect, love, admiration. So you can see when we talk, we can talk about that for a long time, because our school system are based on rewards, threats, punishment. How do we minimize that? So it's not that we're going to eliminate any contingencies. That's not, there's an article that I like that talks about free will is an illusion. And it is an illusion. You're not free of contingencies. There's rules everywhere, right? On our way to work here, we had to respect traffic lights, right? If we don't do that because we don't really like traffic lights, it's going to be chaos. But how do we perceive this control is what is important. Do we see it as something that is valued so that we can live in harmony in society, or is it something that we perceive as not necessary? So how do we perceive, so in the context of school, how do we perceive grades? How do we perceive tests? What does that mean? Okay, so we can talk more. I think we'll come back to this side probably. Motivation, I just want to talk a little bit about sort of the full spectrum. So in terms of motivation, we talk about a continuum of self-determination. On the far right, you'll have intrinsic motivation, which is basically doing things because you like it. Think about leisure activities. It's very hard and very rare to stay in the space of intrinsic motivation. Even throughout a day, you could be feeling intrinsically motivated some parts of the day, but not for the entire day, right? Even if you do an activity that is fun, like golfing, when you get to the 18th hole, it starts to hurt a little bit, right? And you're like, okay, I'm kind of done. I'm tired. I want to go do something else. So identification / integration is kind of where we want to be. That's, call it the carrot here, but it's really the value. Do I think that this is an important activity? And that's what creating an environment that is student-centered means, versus an environment where I feel coerced and I'm doing things just because I have to, and if the adults or the people telling me what to do were not there, I would stop doing it. So ideally, education, and even if the teacher doesn't show up, the students would continue to engage in the teaching and learning because it's something valuable. Here's some results. So why student-centeredness? Why does it matter? And I can talk more about sort of the assessment, but student-centered learning, we have a scale, a 6-item scale that measures student-centeredness. And basically, the essence of the items are things like, I feel supported by my instructor. I feel I can trust my instructor. I feel like my instructor understands my perspective. I'm provided with choices and options in how I want to go about doing my work. And it could mean various things. When we have student-centeredness, there is more perceived competence that is experienced after the semester compared to before. So we have an increase, whether we're looking at the replacement model or the supplemental model. So in this case, I'm looking at about 14,000 pieces of data coming from students in these impact classes. They're all impact classes. Whether we're using the flipped replacement model or the large lecture supplemented by online instruction,